Have you ever noticed that you reach for your phone or start making a mental to-do list? The instant a thought about death quietly slides into your head. Maybe it happens at a red light, or right after a stranger on the news passes away, or when you look at old family photos and realize that person is gone now. The next thing you know, you are scrolling, humming, checking emails, doing anything to close that door again. Today, we are cracking that door open on purpose because the psychology behind it explains far more than you would expect. Welcome to Mind Decoded. I'm Dr. Ann.
And I'm Zach. Dr. Ann, what are we unpacking today?
We are unpacking death anxiety. And before anyone clicks away because that sounds morbid, let me say this clearly. This is not a conversation about dying. It is a conversation about living, about why you care so much about being right, about being remembered, about why you sometimes defend your opinion so fiercely, and why you feel that little cold pang when someone ignores your message.
Okay, so death anxiety is the secret thread underneath all of that?
In many cases, yes. Psychologist William James called it the worm at the core. The idea is that beneath a huge amount of human behavior sits an awareness that life is temporary, not in a dramatic, gothic way, more like a hum in the basement you learn to live with.
So my brain is basically running from the fact that I'm going to die, and I didn't even get an alert?
Exactly. Here is the strange part. You rarely feel it as fear of death. You feel it as annoyance when someone disagrees with you, as the urge to buy a nicer car, as the impulse to post a flattering picture, or as the need to win an argument. According to terror management theory, those are all ways your mind keeps the terror of mortality buried.
That is both wild and uncomfortably familiar.
The groundwork really started with cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker. In 1973, he wrote a book called The Denial of Death, and it won the Pulitzer Prize the following year. Becker argued that humans are unique in the animal world because we can imagine the future, and therefore we know we will die. That knowledge would be unbearable if we sat with it all day.
Right, because if I truly thought about it every second, I'd be on the floor.
So the mind builds two big defense systems. The first is a cultural worldview, a set of beliefs about how the world works, what is good, what matters, that gives life meaning. The second is self-esteem, the feeling that you are a valuable member of that meaningful world. Together, they act like an emotional immune system against the terror of death.
Wait, self-esteem is protection against death? I thought self-esteem was just, confidence.
That's the pop psychology version. Becker and later researchers argued that self-esteem is literally an anxiety buffer. When you feel valuable, you feel eligible for safety and significance. When you feel worthless, the death awareness leaks in.
So every time I feel proud after finishing a project, I'm not just proud, I'm also pushing death away a little?
That is exactly the claim. It's a bit of a mind bender the first time you hear it.
Okay, then how do scientists prove something like that?
In the 1980s, three social psychologists, Sheldon Salomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pisinski, turned Becker's ideas into testable experiments. They proposed that if death fear underlies so much behavior, then temporarily making people think about death should make them cling harder to their worldviews and their groups.
So they did what? Showed people scary videos?
Not even. They used a very quiet technique called mortality salience. That phrase just means they turned on the awareness of death. Often the prompt asks people to write two short responses. What do you think happens to you physically when you die? And what emotions does the thought of your own death arouse in you?
That is a heavy Tuesday afternoon.
And then those people, compared to control groups who wrote about dental pain or watching TV, started behaving differently.
Dental pain was the control? I love that.
One classic study looked at judges. The judges who had been reminded of death set bail much higher for an alleged offender than judges who had not. Same case, same offense, but mortality salience made them more punitive.
Hold on, it changed how they treated another person in a legal decision?
Yes. Because when death awareness is high, we defend our cultural standards more harshly. We want to punish people who violate the rules. because those rules are part of what makes our world feel safe and meaningful.
Okay, I did not see that coming. So when I got unreasonably angry at the guy who cut me off last Tuesday, maybe I wasn't only angry about the car. I was defending my little ordered universe.
Maybe. The mind often attaches death anxiety to smaller, safer targets. Road rage, social media arguments, office gossip, those are places where you can say, I am right. The world should work this way. People should behave. It gives you a brief feeling of control.
Oh no, I'm just realizing something. Last month I spent an entire evening refreshing our podcast listener stats. I told myself it was just analytics, but now I'm thinking about what was really going on. If the numbers went up, I felt solid. If they stayed flat, I felt this little cold wind, like I was disappearing. Was that death anxiety?
That is a beautiful example. You are using external proof of significance to keep that cold wind away. The philosopher Sam Keen called this a symbolic immortality project. You want to leave a mark that lasts beyond your body.
So my podcast is a symbolic immortality project? I thought I just liked making audio.
Those two things can be true at once. The project matters to you, and part of why it matters so deeply is that it promises something larger than a single lifespan.
Okay, that explains why a flat stat line felt less like a business problem and more like an existential verdict. I'm both comforted and a little freaked out.
And look, once you understand this mechanism, you might actually feel more compassion for yourself, because this isn't a character flaw. It's how brains like yours are built to manage the awareness of mortality. You are not outrageously selfish or shallow for wanting to be seen. You are a human trying to feel real.
That helps. I always thought it meant I was too attached to external validation.
It's not that simple. Validation is one of many symbolic shields. Now here's the part that surprised me most when I first read this research. Most people assume the response to death thoughts goes like this: fear, panic, shutting down. But the science tells a very different story. The mind first uses quick distractions and denial, and then if the death awareness is still there, it turns to the big symbolic buffers.
So there's a first responder system and then a long-term construction crew?
Exactly. Think of it like your brain running a background program that constantly checks for threats to your sense of permanence. When a death reminder pops up, the fast system says, just think about something else. Scroll, eat, plan a vacation. That's called proximal defense. It buys you time. Then the slower system steps in. It says, remind yourself who you are. You belong to this community. You believe in these values. You matter. That's distal defense.
And if I have no meaning or community, the alarm just keeps ringing?
That's often when people experience more conscious death anxiety, or bounce between numbing and frantic busyness. Some researchers also connect it to materialism, status chasing, even rage at outsiders.
So the person with the huge truck and angry bumper stickers might be doing more than expressing opinions. They might be holding up a shield.
Possibly. We can't diagnose strangers, but terror management theory predicts that when self-esteem is low or meaning is fragile, people grab more visible shields. They make their group feel more special, their enemies more dangerous, their symbols more sacred. It all serves the same quiet purpose, to make the self feel permanent.
That is such a different way to understand why people fight online.
It is. And it can reduce how personal those fights feel. You start to see a person gripping a meaning shield, not just a wrong opinion.
What about children? Do 5-year-olds have death anxiety?
The understanding emerges gradually. Very young kids may not grasp that death is permanent. By around age 7 or 8, many understand irreversibility, but the full existential weight often lands in adolescence, when abstract thinking really comes online.
So that explains teenage poems about the void.
It does. Adolescence is when symbolic immortality projects often kick into high gear. Rebellion, grand romances, wanting to be remembered by the whole school.
I wrote a song in high school called Echo. It was very serious about being remembered. Now I'm dying a little inside hearing this.
But that's the beauty of it. You weren't broken. You were just waking up to the human condition and trying to make sense of it with the tools you had.
Is death anxiety really the root of all fears? That's a huge claim.
I wouldn't say it is the root of every single twitch, but terror management researchers argue that existential fear often sits beneath specific fears like failure, rejection, even some phobias. Fear of falling isn't just about the fall, it brushes against the end of control. Fear of being forgotten is death anxiety wearing a social mask.
So when I'm scared to publish an episode because people might not care, the deeper scare is irrelevance, which is a cousin of death.
Yes, and that's why the stakes feel so high. It is not just an episode, it's a little test of whether your existence can echo.
How do researchers know the death thoughts are actually being pushed down? Maybe people just answer surveys politely.
Haha, good question. They use a clever measure called death thought accessibility. Participants complete word fragments. If death thoughts are near the surface, they are more likely to turn COFF blank blank into CO often F blank blank into CO hoffen.
No way, they use coffee and coffin?
Yes, the task is disguised as a vocabulary test, and the pattern is fascinating. Right after a death reminder, people often try to push the thoughts away, but if you first distract them for a bit, the death thoughts bounce back higher. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
So suppression makes it worse.
Exactly, which is why the mindful approach is more effective. Let the beach ball bob there without fighting it.
So the tough guy who says I never think about death might actually be shaped by it more.
That's very possible. If death awareness never enters conscious thought, it can steer behavior from the basement without him ever checking the map.
This makes me think of how people post life is short after someone famous dies. Then the next day everyone is back to brunch photos. Is that both defenses?
Perfect observation. The life is short post is often a distal defense, a burst of meaning. The return to ordinary posting can be proximal distraction. The system is managing the ripple.
I've absolutely done that. I watched a whole documentary about a musician, felt this huge urge to text everyone I love, and then 3 hours later I was ordering takeaway and watching car videos.
That's a human being processing mortality salience. The meaning reflex was real. The return to comfort was also real. Neither means you were fake.
What about culture itself? Are cathedrals and national anthems just death anxiety?
That's one of the boldest claims in the field. Culture gives us a script. Be a good person, work hard, raise children, build something. In return, it offers the feeling that we belong to something that lasts beyond our bodies. Nation, religion, family lineage, professional identity, all can serve that function.
So when my grandmother plants a tree for each grandchild, it's not just a tree, it's a living symbol.
Yes. And that is why these symbols can feel sacred. People will sometimes fight harder to protect a flag or a family name than to protect their own comfort because the symbol carries their piece of permanence.
So art is a defense?
Research suggests creativity can be a healthy symbolic immortality project. Writing, painting, building a community garden, these create something that may outlast the maker.
So making art is a defense, but maybe a lovely one.
Exactly. Defenses aren't inherently bad, they're strategies. Some strategies cost you your evenings and relationships. Others bring more beauty into the world.
Okay, so what do I do with all of this? If I notice I'm refreshing stats to prove I exist, should I stop?
Not necessarily. The goal isn't to eliminate death anxiety. That would be impossible. And a certain amount of existential urgency gives life texture. It pushes people to create, to love, to leave things better than they found them. The goal is to notice what it's doing in real time so it doesn't run you on autopilot.
So awareness is the whole game?
A large part of it. Here is a concrete practice from the research on meaning. When you feel a sudden spike of defensiveness, judgment, or compulsive busyness, pause and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of right now? Not in a dramatic therapy office way, just curious.
And if the answer is death, then what?
Then you get to choose. You can still scroll, but maybe you also call a friend, sit outside for 5 minutes, or do one small thing that expresses your values. What helps isn't avoiding death thoughts, it's holding them while staying connected to what matters.
That sounds almost like making friends with it.
Yes, some research on mindfulness and death anxiety suggests that people who observe their thoughts without running from them tend to report less distress around mortality, not zero, less.
So the person who can sit quietly and think, yep, I'm temporary, becomes calmer than the person who does 17 tasks to avoid it.
Generally, yes. It sounds backwards, but accepting finiteness can make the present more vivid.
I think I felt that once on a hiking trail. No phone signal, weird silence, and for a second I thought about death without panicking. I just noticed the light through the trees.
That's a beautiful example. You weren't trying to solve death or beat it, you were just there. Presence is one of the healthier responses to mortality awareness.
This episode is making me look at my phone, my opinions, even my road rage differently. If you're listening and you've ever caught yourself trying to outrun that quiet voice, maybe hit subscribe. This is what Mind Decoded does every day. It takes the invisible stuff in your head and makes it a little easier to understand.
We would love to keep doing that with you.
And honestly, knowing all this doesn't make me feel worse. It makes me feel less crazy.
That's the point. Psychology should help you see the machinery without making you feel like the machine is broken.
So what is the one thing we should carry into the rest of today?
Here it is. The next time you feel the itch to scroll, prove yourself, or argue with a stranger, treat that itch as information. It may be a signal that mortality awareness just turned on. You don't have to solve it. Just pause, take a breath, and ask, what am I really running from? Then choose one small action that connects you to something you actually value.
Not running from death, but leaning into life.
That's a lovely way to put it.
Thanks, Dr. Ant. I think I'll be a little friendlier to my own weird brain tonight.
That's the best possible outcome. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.